St. John's Cathedral is the oldest surviving ecclesiastical church in Hong Kong, as well as the oldest Anglican building in the Far East.
The cathedral has been a significant part of people's daily lives throughout some of the world's hardest fought battles, like Pearl Harbor, the World Wars, and some of the major events in Hong Kong's history, like the Japanese occupation and British colonization.
Not only is it famous for its long history and involvement in the society of Hong Kong, its unique architecture has attracted many people around the world.
This is the story of its legacy.
The church was inaugurated in March 11, 1849. It would soon encounter the strenuous series of events that made St. John's Cathedral what it is today.
On the morning of December 8, 1941, the day after their attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked Hong Kong. Regardless of what was looked at as an inexorable situation, on Christmas morning of 1941, Reverend Alaric P. Rose gave his traditional sermon with an audience of 100 people, whilst bombs went off in the background. His devotion to his faith was contagious to the people whom he preached to.
During the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong, the cathedral was turned into a clubhouse for the Japanese elite. Though the cathedral's custom stayed alive, some of the original fittings were stripped out, including the original stained glass made by William Morris that added to the individual architecture of the cathedral. The cathedral's mission committee are still at work conducting appeals for clothing, medical supplies for the lepers in Pak Hoi and other missions in China. They built orphanages and produced homemade clothing for the children in need. These generous tasks brought together the people of Hong Kong during these grime times.
September 9, 1945, was the day of the first service after the arrival of the Royal Navy. It was a day to be commemorated. Soon after this day, Bishop R.O. Hall returned from China. He made Reverend Alaric P. Rose the dean of the ministry. It was because of his love and devotion over the years to the exquisite piece of Hong Kong's heritage that made it become a monument in 1996.
But in China, the Protestant missionaries, with Bibles in hand and with the translation of the Bible into Chinese by Morrison in the 1840s, established outposts all over the country. One can say that it probably didn't have a particularly happy history, because it was the whole basic Christian conversion message was in conflict with an awful lot of Chinese culture.
Our interview with Reverend John Chin Chen, chaplain of the St. John's Cathedral, revealed to us much of the impact the cathedral has had in Hong Kong. It was 1841 when Hong Kong became a British possession under controversial circumstances. Certain institutions like the Church of England followed the empire wherever colonies were established around the world. It was natural to look for a government house as it was to look for a place where the Church of England would establish itself. Members of the Navy and the Army, who made up a majority of the congregation, would gather for a Sunday service in the building that was located where the park across the street from the cathedral is today. As the settlement grew, a request was made to London for a grant to build a church. Building started in 1847 when the foundation stone was placed. The first service took place in 1849. The cathedral is a neo-Gothic building that used locally available materials. In the 19th century, as technology advanced and the Industrial Revolution took place, modifications were made to improve it, as are the cast iron windows and the fans installed once electricity was available. During the Second World War, the building was greatly damaged during the Japanese occupation. Reverend John described how the Japanese turned it into a clubhouse and stables for their horses. The stained glass windows had to be replaced, but in 1945, as the war ended, the church was quickly cleaned up. St. John's Cathedral is one of the few landmarks in Hong Kong that tells its story. Founded by British Navy officers and adopted by expats, Chinese, and Filipinos once the handover took place, it is overflowing with the true culture that makes Hong Kong what it is. The church has brought hope to Hong Kong citizens in times where hope was nowhere to be sought. Its community is bound together by love and devotion to the church and its heritage. It is a symbol of permanence in a city that is constantly changing.